educate the public.
Patricia,
Yep.
I'm sorry. I just want to let me just confirm with our IT person. I'm going to text him.
Okay.
We're set. I just got nervous that maybe we weren't.
No,
So
that's fine.
sorry about that. I'll come back on when we are really ready.
Okay.
Okay, my apologies. We are all set and live streaming through the Bethlehem Central Schools events YouTube page now.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Patricia Sibilia. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Albany County, and I thank the Bethlehem School District for inviting us to co-sponsor tonight's candidate forum and providing an opportunity to educate the public on the candidates before heading out to vote. The League of Women Voters is an organization that was founded out of the women's suffrage movement, and it is focused on civic engagement and education. The Albany chapter is an all-volunteer organization made up of individuals, both men and women, and our core work is dedicated to education and civic engagement. We are a nonpartisan organization, meaning we never support or oppose any candidates or political parties. Our reputation is founded on this, and our reputation is founded on this nonpartisan position, and we adhere strictly to it. And with that, I will let you know that I was chosen as tonight's moderator because I live outside of the district and have no vested interest in the outcome of this race. Please consider supporting us by becoming a member or making a contribution to us. Other league members have played a role in tonight's event. On screen, you see Deb Liebman, our timer, and she can wave a card or her hand. There you go. Yep. And Ellen Sullivan also worked on this and with the questions. And Mary Berry, our Director of Voter Services, was coordinator on the entire event. The forum is being live streamed, as you can see, over the Bethlehem Board of Education YouTube channel. It will be recorded for later viewing. Voting for the candidates and the school budget is on May 17th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the upper gym at the Bethlehem High School. And if needed, absentee ballots are available at the district office. At the same time, Bethlehem voters will also vote on the library budget and one open trustee position. A Meet the Candidate event was held on May 4th and can be viewed on the library's website. Okay, a little bit about the school board and the role on the candidates. So the Bethlehem Central School Board of Education has 7 members. Members of the Board of Education are elected by the voters of the district to establish policy and to direct the administration of our schools. Board members serve as volunteers for 3-year terms. They receive no salary, no compensation. They do it out of a real want to improve things. Those elected this year will each serve terms beginning July 1st of 2022 this year, and it'll go through June 30th of 2025. Individuals are eligible for election to the board if they're qualified voters of the district, meaning they're a resident, they're over 18 years old, or they're a U.S. citizen, and they can read and write. New York State education law does not limit the number of terms of office a member can serve. The league has a policy to only invite those people who have been certified as candidates to our forums. And tonight we have 4 candidates that are vying for 2 open seats. They are, in alphabetical order, Douglas Lloyd, Tamara Starr, Robert Tejan, and John Watson. Okay, our ground rules for tonight. So this forum is going to run from 6:30 to 8. The community had an opportunity to submit questions via an online form until Sunday at 5 p.m. Almost 100 questions were submitted, and there was a Lot that was covered by the community. The questions were reviewed and they were discarded if they were duplicative or combined. We would discard anything that was personal or inflammatory. And we ended up with a set that I'm going to choose from tonight to try and cover. Some were discarded as well. I'll make a note so that people understand, because question would be submitted that's just not pertinent to the office. But as we know, due to the lack of time, not all questions are going to get asked. The candidates will have up to 2 minutes. So they have up to two. They don't have to use two, but they have up to 2 minutes for an opening statement. And then they have up to 2 minutes to answer each of the questions. And then at the end, we'll have closing statements that will be 1 minute. They will answer the questions in rotating order. So I drew lots. Actually, it was high cards before we started this evening. And we will have Mr. Tijan be the first person to answer, then Ms. Starr, then Mr. Watson, and then Mr. Lloyd. And it'll rotate through there. So they'll always be following the same person. The timekeeper will hold up signs signaling the candidates when their 1 minute remains. Deb, hold up your 1 minute sign so people can see. Thank you. And when 30 seconds remains, and then they will get a stop. There you go. Their candidates are expected to respect and comply with the time limits. And I, as moderator, I'm in charge. I'll make sure that happens. So, and I'm sure they'll be just fine. During their responses, the candidates may not interrupt each other or make any personal attacks. We are about to begin. So as I said, our opening statements are going to start for 2 minutes, and we are going to start with Mr. Tijan. Mr. Tijan, take it away.
Good evening. My name is Bob Tijan, and I am running for my first term at the school board. I am a 18-year resident of Bethlehem. I have 3 children, 2 of whom who already have graduated from Bethlehem High School, one who's out of college and gainfully employed. The other's a freshman in college, and I have 1 student left who's a sophomore in the high school. My wife, Deborah, also attended and graduated from Bethlehem High School. So we have strong roots in the community. In terms of my professional background, I started off as an English teacher. My undergraduate degree is in secondary education with a minor in English, and I have a master's degree in English literature. I taught for 5 years at South School for Boys in Albany, and then for a year at the Albany County BOCES. Subsequently, I attended Albany Law School, and from then on have been a practicing attorney, first at a national law firm and more recently at a smaller but equally prestigious smaller law firm in Albany. I think that my dual background as a teacher and as an attorney provides me with a strong foundation for service on the board. As a teacher, I not only had to educate the students, but was involved in the development and implementation of curriculum, which I think is important for the board. And as an attorney, every day I have to consume large amounts of information, assess the information, weigh the relative benefits of it, and develop strategies for best implementing whatever the information leads us to. I've always been involved in volunteering activities within the community, mostly in coaching, and I want to continue that in a new and different way. I have a vested interest in this, not only because of my daughter, who's still a sophomore in the school, but also because I really truly believe that strong schools equal strong communities, and I want to make sure that I do my part to continue the excellence that Bethlehem's had so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tijan. Ms. Starr, your opening statement.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tamara Starr, and I am also running for my first term for the school board. And although I've only been a resident here for 2.5 years, I have 3 young children, 2.5, 7, and 10. So I will be here for a while. And I feel that I can bring a unique perspective to the table, especially since I have experienced academic environments in several cities and towns in Massachusetts, New York City, and now Bethlehem Central District. So I feel that I will not only be able to listen to what the needs are among residents, but I'm also able to kind of help us all together figure out ideas of programs and support that we can provide for our students.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. Now we will hear from Mr. Walston.
Good evening. First of all, thank you to the League of Women Voters and all the administrative staff involved in organizing the forum. My name is John Walston. My wife Megan and I have been able to call Bethlehem our home for about 21 years now, and we have 3 children here. For about 15 of those years, I've been involved in the community pretty actively through coaching a long list of sports teams, volunteering in the schools and different school programs, volunteering for community projects, and most recently as a member of the Wellness Committee for our schools. I've operated a not-for-profit called the Keep On Movement for the last 1.5 years, and that's an organization that focuses on encouraging people to embrace the struggles and challenges in life, focus on positivity, and keep on moving forward. I also, for 19 years, have had a construction business here in town. I'm very grateful for all the community support of local businesses. Most thankfully is the school district that we live in. I think it's filled with many wonderful teachers and staff who are truly invested in our kids. And I do recognize that we're blessed to have the resources in our schools that many other school districts do not have. I think our schools are much more than a learning institution, as we have the ability to be so involved in our kids' education and their development. And I think our kids have a very unique ability here to not just be inspired by our great staff, but also our students, I think, are given access to resources and tools to be inspirational to themselves. I think I understand leadership really well, and I have a relentlessly positive attitude to overcome obstacles and focus on solutions. I understand what it takes to be part of a team focused on something bigger than ourselves, and I feel that I can be a productive member of the school board and always remain focused on the students' best interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Okay, Mr. Lloyd, your turn up.
Hello, Bethlehem. My name is Douglas Lloyd. I am class of 1996, and I have about 25 years of experience in the defense and technology sector. I'm running for school board to be the voice for, in these very cultural implemented times where a lot of our parents and our teachers are not being heard. So I'm looking to bring back the neutral aspect of our schools, where we can focus on elite academics over a lot of the time that we're spending on cultural issues. A lot of things that I would ask everybody tonight to try to find the good in a lot of things that I say. Some people may have to change their paradigm a little bit to find the good in what I'm saying, so that it's not taken out of context. We have to say things that can offend other people, and offending other people is a normal part of communication. So we need to explore all options, all avenues, and lay it all out on the table, discuss the issues without getting personal or putting words in somebody else's mouth. So I'm really looking to bring elite academics back to Bethlehem.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Okay, we're going to start with our first question. And as I said, we rotate the order, and with that, Ms. Starr is first. The question is, have you been endorsed by the Bethlehem Republican or Bethlehem Democratic Committee? Have you accepted any support, monetarily or otherwise, from political parties or partisan groups?
I can definitely say I have not. I feel like all my contributions have just come from Bethlehem residents who are supporting my campaign, but no endorsements from anyone.
Thank you. Mr. Watson, same question for you.
Correct, same for me. I have not had any affiliation or any interest in being aligned with any political party.
Excellent. And then the question goes to Mr. Walston. I'm sorry, Mr. I screwed that up. Mr. Lloyd.
Well, let me start by saying that I am a lifelong Democrat, and I did recently join the Bethlehem Republican Committee. I still consider myself a Democrat at heart. I don't think my issues or my beliefs and values have changed so much. I believe we are at a serious cultural divide that has split us so much. Um, I have not received direct funding from the Bethlehem Republican Committee, but I have received funding from members of the committee, along with many other members in this, or many other community members in our town.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Tejan?
I have not received either endorsement nor money from any political parties.
Okay, we're on to question number 2. So this question will be first answered by Mr. Walston. What are your views and understanding on critical race theory?
My views and understanding is that in New York State, it's not even an issue right now. So I don't think it's anything that we really have to touch on, because critical race theory is not anything involved in the New York State curriculum.
Thank you, Mr. Walston. Mr. Lloyd?
Critical race theory is one of these learning methods and ideologies that is, again, started with good intentions. But it's something that we need to evaluate how it is rolled out so that it does not divide people.
Thanks for your response. Mr. Tejan?
I mean, my general understanding of critical race theory is that it's sort of a graduate level theory or method of examining the world. I don't recall specifically if I had it in either graduate school or law school, but I did have lots of experience with different methods of examining the world, deconstructionism and things like that. So it's not something that necessarily frightens me at all. I think it's just a different way of looking at the world and examining how things are. But yeah, at the end of the day, I agree with Mr. Walston that it's not a part of the curriculum. It's a graduate level course, and it's not something that I think the board is going to have to decide on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tejan. Ms. Starr?
I also agree with Mr. Walston and now Mr. Tejan that it's not a part of our curriculum in New York. However, my point of view is that when it comes, I am a political science geek and a history buff, and I feel with any government courses, social issues should be addressed as long as it's a part of the curriculum. But since critical race theory is not really an issue within our state, I don't see it being a problem right now.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question is going to start with Mr. Lloyd. And it is, do you believe there might be circumstances for books to be banned and or removed from a public school library? If yes, under what circumstances and using what criteria, and who would make these decisions?
Banning books is a term that really gets overused in politics, especially when we're trying to apply that to our schools. We're really talking about removing either controversial topics and age-appropriate material. When we have sexually explicit material in our schools, or books on certain topics that we all don't agree on, that should be looked at and removed from our schools, right? We really don't need kids. There's a big difference between sexual education and teaching kids how to have sex, because a lot of these controversial books that we're looking at, like Genderqueer or Lawn Boy, they are very sexually explicit, and they have very sexually explicit images in them. And that would be the job of the board to review that in coordination with the community and the library and our teachers.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Tejan?
So as an English major, even the idea of banning books is repugnant to me in general. Obviously, I sort of abhor absolutes, so it's not as if there couldn't ever be a book that I think would be inappropriate to be in a library. But my strong presumption is against it. In terms of the type of books that are available in a school library, quite frankly, I think that to the extent that a student is mature enough to seek that out, they probably are mature enough to handle whatever the content is. And given the fact that they're walking around with mini computers in their pockets and they can access any type of information that they want, the concern about whatever hard copy books are in our libraries, I think, is a distraction and not something that I'd either support or be too concerned with.
Thank you. Ms. Starr.
So I agree with Mr. Tejan that I completely am against banning books. I also understand that things do need to be reviewed within the community. However, I was told by one student that a book that was considered controversial for, I believe, the 5th grade level was just a book that showed different kinds of families and even families with same-sex couples, and that was considered controversial. And I disagree with that because I feel for the sake of inclusivity, we need to show our children that there are loving families out there that look in different ways. There are a variety of loving families. So that is my stance.
Thank you. Mr. Walston.
In terms of book banning, I mean, I agree. I think it's very much of a, politically polarizing type of scenario. I don't really see a need for much of having to really do any book banning. I agree with Mr. Tejan how, if kids are mature enough to seek something out in a library, then they should. I think it really comes down to us encouraging productive conversation. If there's a parent who has a concern, I don't think they need to be outraged and bring something crazy to the board. I think they can speak with a teacher, discuss options, understand where that book is coming from. For instance, my daughter in 10th grade right now is reading a fairly explicit book, and I think it's something where the parents should have some conversation with the child, make sure they're okay to manage it. But I think we do have to respect some people where some parents may be more conservative. And, we even have some cultures here where, people really limit the amount of skin that they're showing. And when you get into some of these topics, I think really productive conversation and rational conversation can be beneficial, just so we have understanding. But I also think if there's a book that may be empowering to a young person, that should be considered as well. So I think it really comes down to conversation versus the yes or no and, very emotional response to things that I think can really be managed like adults and be an example for the kids of how we can kind of work through potential challenges or understand each other better.
Thank you, Mr. Walston. Okay, we're up to the 4th question, and this one will begin with Mr. Tejan. An important role of the Board of Education is to develop the school budget. In the past 5 years, Bethlehem Central School District's enrollment has declined, but the budget has increased. What actions can be taken to address this trend?
Well, we would have to examine the budget. I mean, a large portion of the budget is tied up with salaries. So to a certain extent, that's going to be sort of a lagging indicator. To the extent that the population of students continues to decline, then in the future, as teachers retire, possibly they don't get replaced. But that's something that happens down the road. To a certain, I'm not sure of the relationship that the relationship between student population and budget is a one-to-one relationship, because a lot of the expenditures take place over the entire population of the students. Obviously, as a taxpayer myself, I'm concerned about the budget. I'm concerned about the taxes that we pay, and if I was on the board, I would have to, sort of sharpen the pencil, sit down and figure out where, if that could be cut, and do my best to make sure that the budget is as reasonable as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Tejan. Ms. Starr?
I feel that Bethlehem District is amazing academically, and that's the reason why my family chose to move here. And I feel to attract more families to come to this area, we also need to excel culturally and to show more opportunities for our students, because we're great when it comes to sports and we have that lab school at the high school, but that's only for 100 students. I feel that some of those programs can be expanded district wide so more students can get involved with STEM projects or even the arts. And Slingerlands has the intercultural fair that I hope comes back, and I feel that should be brought district wide. I feel each school has such an important gem that can be spread district wide, and that's something I would like to do if elected on the board, is figure out, you know, all the great stuff each elementary school is having, and even the middle school and high school, and try to make that district wide.
Thank you. Mr. Walston?
I think school budgets are definitely a very, very difficult challenge as you look at things. You know, it's oftentimes difficult to please everyone. And I think, you know, definitely you look at our budget, there is a large amount that's essentially eaten up by personnel. And then I think it's a matter of trying to decide what priorities of the school are and what options will potentially be most beneficial. But I think, you know, really kind of narrowing it down and seeing what the trends change. I mean, there could be a change, there could not. I think, you know, again, having been in business for almost 20 years, budgets is something that you really have to take a lot of time to look at and really prioritize, and unfortunately sometimes make some challenging decisions. But I think at the forefront of that has to be the quality of our school, the quality of the education, the safety of our students. So there's a lot of things to consider with that. So I think to really narrow it down to one thing right now is a challenge without having a more detailed look at the budget, as well as getting a lot of feedback from the school administrators, the staff, as well as the community at large.
Thank you, Mr. Walston. Mr. Lloyd?
Yeah, so Bethlehem residents bear a very high tax burden. 5 times the amount of money goes into our schools than goes into our towns. It seems that everything that has been brought up to the budget has been rubber stamped and set right through. There's not many times where we've said no to any improvements or upgrades, or if there was a grant where we would offset money on that. So we really need to be doing more thorough cost benefit analysis on any way we're going to be spending money. There's certain ways we can do this. One is looking at a buy versus build. We have our schools that are outsourcing a lot of their technology, so we're paying for the licensing, the maintenance, the support, and there's no return on investment there. That's straight money out the window. So we should be looking at having developers on staff to handle all this. And there's a lot of dependencies right now, including with BOCES. We need to be looking at maximizing our technology investments. And we really need to be looking at reviewing a lot of these political agendas that we're seeing coming down, even if it's state funding. I mean, what benefit to our kids' education do electric buses have? You know, I totally understand we should be evaluating all technology, but when we're making these massive investments and they do nothing for the benefit of our children to their education, we should look at that a little closer.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Okay, I'll just remind people, these are questions submitted by the public. So this next question I will phrase as it was submitted. It's obviously not myself asking the question, but I'm putting it forward as a person who submitted it. But I also do want to remind the candidates, if at any time you want me to repeat the question on anything that we're doing, just let me know and I'm happy to do that. So this first one, this is Ms. Starr's first, she'll be first on this one. And the question is, as both a parent of 2 district elementary students and a teacher, I felt that the school's response to COVID-19 has been well planned, implemented, and adjusted throughout the pandemic. While easy to judge in hindsight, how have you felt about the district's COVID response, and how would you hope to influence that plan moving forward? Ms. Starr?
Well, it was actually during COVID, I decided to move here because I used to live off Western Avenue. My kids were at Eagle Point Elementary, and we got the notice that the kids were going to go remote for another year. And I have a couple of good friends who live here, and then they said, "Oh no, it's going to go back in person in Bethlehem. You should come here." And I went in a heartbeat. I looked for a house and came here. And I feel honestly, I feel the district did a great job. I mean, it was not an easy job at all, but did the best that they could. And our teachers definitely did the best that they could. And, it was hard on our students. And it was definitely hard on my kids. And I feel now things are starting to get to a better situation. I am a believer in still following CDC guidelines or whatever New York State advises districts to do. However, I do feel as a whole, the Bethlehem district did a great job. And so our teachers. Our teachers were amazing during that time.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. Mr. Walston?
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, as a parent who's I had 3 kids during the COVID time. I mean, I feel like at all the different levels, there was a great effort to keep the kids in person. And I think that knowing what happened on other parts of the country, even other school districts locally, I think a really exceptional job and a lot of work was really put in. I think it was great how the superintendents collaborated from not only the capital region, but I think they also went out towards the Rochester area and really tried to work hard to keep everyone in school. I think there's a lot of things in hindsight you could certainly look back at and say, oh, maybe this should have been done, that should have been done. But I think in the moment, I think they really approached it with great intentions. And I'm just really glad that we're back in person and that the kids are able to see each other smile, and we're moving forward. So it's great.
Thank you, Mr. Walston. Mr. Lloyd?
Well, you don't have to be sick to get better. Our children throughout the pandemic who were the least impacted by COVID bore the brunt of the restrictions. We took them out of the classroom for a long time, which had advantages and disadvantages because parents did get to see a bit more of what was going on in the classroom due to remote learning. But we as a whole learned how important that our classroom time is. But there's a couple areas where we can do better next time. And I would personally call for an internal review board so that we can look at the issues that we've had, address them, and get better for next time. I mean, the first thing we didn't even do was we didn't look at any other alternative health options. Having a healthy immune system was the number one thing we can do to have good health through this pandemic. We've had a lot of parents who have been pretty upset with the vaccine mandates. We are talking about experimental, brand new technology that we have mandated on our children. And even now we have kids that are banned from sports because they're not vaccinated. We're talking 20% of Bethlehem, I believe, are not vaccinated at this point. So we're going with a policy where children are able to sit next to each other in class, but they're not able to play sports. We basically taught our children that they are dangerous to others if they're not vaccinated, and that simply isn't true. I've got immunocompromised students who their doctor recommendation was not to wear the mask because of their issue. But again, our schools were forced for everybody to mask. So we really need to look at these issues.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Tejan?
So I think the question even prefaced this, in the wording about looking back in hindsight. Obviously, there's always things that you can look back on and think that we could have done this differently or possibly a little bit better. But overall, I have to say that I believed at the time and continue to believe that everybody involved was making good faith decisions based on what they believed to be the best interests of the students and the staff based on the best information that they had at the time. And so I was satisfied with the response of the school. I think that the response changed over time as different factors were altered. New information came in. Obviously, the vaccines were a big part of that. And then as things developed, I think that the school was good about altering the recommendations and altering the guidelines. And I think that's completely appropriate. In terms of what I would do going forward, I would continue to assess the information. I would continue to listen to the recommendations of the various health organizations that are giving recommendations, and I would continue to make sure that the school is considering the best interests of the students and the staff in conjunction with trying to provide the best and highest level of education.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tejan. All right, for question number 6, Mr. Walston gets to go first. Okay. What can schools do to support students with special needs? What would be some of your recommendations for ways for greater inclusion of these students in general education, after school activities, and sports?
It's a great question. Well, I think anyone who's gone to a unified sports activity and not shed a tear may have to have some conversation with themselves about what they really have going on inside. I think our unified sports program is exceptional. I think Mr. Mooney does an amazing job, and all the student volunteers, I mean, you've got great leadership opportunities. So I think that those activities are really exceptional. And we've got several other clubs. The names are escaping me, but I think that the opportunities at the high school are great. I think, best buddies and those types of programs are really phenomenal. And I think, again, it allows the kids with special needs to really have some great experiences. It provides leadership opportunities for some of the other children that are volunteering there. And I think, I think it's one of those budget things. I think we really need to consider where our priorities are. But I think cutting back on special ed services, funding and whatnot is something that can be incredibly damaging for the population of kids with special needs. And I think especially, again, with the social emotional health of our kids needs to really be paramount going forward. So I think just trying to ensure that we're creating the greatest opportunities for those kids to be successful is really important.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd?
I think having some of the best teachers for our special needs kids is very important. I've had the privilege of knowing some very amazing special ed teachers who really do more than just your typical school day. They're thinking about these kids all of the time. So having our teachers who are planning additional activities, using their own resources to really become part of these kids' lives and help them with their special needs is critical. I also think it's important that we integrate as much as possible and give them a wide range of opportunities. Because special needs really has a wide range right now, even going into behavioral issues where these kids just learn differently. So having the right people and the right programs available is critical.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Tejan?
Yeah, Patricia, could you repeat the question, please?
Absolutely. The question is, what can schools do to support students with special needs? What would be some of your recommendations for ways of greater inclusion of those students in general education, after school activities, and sports?
Sure, thank you. Well, I think that I'll echo the thoughts that have been expressed already, that the inclusion of folks with special needs is incredibly important. It serves those students well, and it also serves well the other kids who are involved with them and who volunteer with them. My viewpoint of the school is that it should be a holistic environment to support all the kids to the best of each kid's ability. Obviously, Bethlehem's well known for its, producing college-ready kids and AP level kids. And I think that we have to make sure that we provide all of the access and organizations that we need for other kids as well. And I think that after school programs are important, and all of the other resources that the school has been provided, I think that we should continue to provide, and the budget should reflect that.
Thank you, Mr. Tejan. Ms. Starr?
I feel that our special education programs in this district are almost like the best kept secret because you don't really hear about it outside. But when I moved here, I was, especially in comparison to other districts, our methods are one of the best I've ever seen. So I feel that we could create, as long as I agree with Mr. Walston, as long as we can create more programs that involve inclusion to get the kids more together, it would be beneficial. But however, in comparison to other districts, it's really one of the best. And I wish that, we can talk about that more, even with other districts, so they can take some advice from us, because we're doing a really good job here when it comes to special education.
Okay, thank you. All right, for question number 7, we begin with Mr. Lloyd. Will you support doing what it takes to make later high school start times a reality in Bethlehem?
Later high school start times. I'm not a morning person, but I do believe that our early start time is not necessarily a bad thing. I would have to really probably bring a meeting together to hear everybody's point of view, but so far I haven't seen enough evidence to recommend moving our start times back.
Okay, Mr. Tejan?
Yeah, I would support moving start times back, at least for the high school students. My understanding of the research on this and the studies show that for the most part, the older kids' sleep patterns and their circadian rhythms are such that the later start time would benefit them. As I recall, I believe that the decision had been made, or at least was being considered, to change the start times prior to COVID. Given my support, and I understand that there's probably logistical issues to be considered, after school programs, sports. I'm not exactly sure, sitting here right now, how that would be affected and what would have to, what would have to change, and whether it would be feasible given the fact that other schools might or might not have the same start times. But my overall impulse is that it's a good idea, and I would support examining it and trying to put it into practice.
Thank you, Mr. Tejan. Ms. Starr?
I would support changing the times, but I understand that because of the bus driver shortage, that's the reason things are the way they are. But however, as a working parent, if we could make the elementary school times earlier, I know that would help a lot of us because it's hard to find childcare. If I have to make sure that my kids are on the bus by 8:55, but I have to start work at 8:30, I have to make sure I have childcare to watch them, to make sure they're on the bus. I feel like I'm hoping we can get enough drivers so that the hours can change for everybody, but I know that's kind of the idealistic situation. But I completely support the concerns about the starting time for the high school. And I honestly wish that the elementary schools could start earlier too.
Okay, Mr. Walston.
I think that logistically, it really seems to be a massive challenge. You'd have to get other schools to be on board. We've got bus driver shortages. The roadblocks just seem pretty significant. And I think that while it's certainly, sleep is important. I'm actually someone who struggles with sleep, so I get it. But I think, I think it's one of those things, kind of prioritizing how much effort you put into something that may have a few too many roadblocks to be that much of a reality. Again, because you've got the bus driver issues, the after school activities, the way that coincides with other schools, students, older students having opportunities to work after school. So I think there's a lot of pieces there that really create a lot of challenges that, again, I think it's a question is priority wise, is it something that's worth putting a ton of time into, given some of our other issues that may be a bit more pressing.
Thank you, Mr. Walston. All right, for question number 8, we begin with Mr. Tejan. There have been a lot of discussion about school curricula. What do you see as the role of the Board of Education in the curriculum?
The role of the school board is to, implement overall policies for the school. Obviously, school curriculum is something that's developed and implemented generally by the teachers, and I would support them in any ideas that they have. I think the curriculum is something that should be continually examined. Obviously, because something was taught 10 years ago or 20 years ago doesn't necessarily mean that it should be taught in the same way today. I think curriculum is an important thing. Obviously, it's what's being presented to our kids, to the students, and I would imagine that it's working in conjunction with the administration and with the teachers to support them, because they're the ones who are in the classroom, they're the ones who are on the ground, and whatever the board says, they're going to be the ones who are implementing whatever curriculum changes are made. And so whatever we did as a board, I would want to make sure that it's in conjunction and close coordination with the teachers. So because it's fine and well to say do this, but if it's not feasible, then we have to have that consideration as well. So I would support the teachers, I would support the administration in developing the curriculum, and then supporting them in what the decisions were made with regard to any changes to the curriculum.
Thank you. Ms. Starr.
I also agree with Mr. Tejan that the curriculum is set by the administration and carried out by the teachers. And the role of a board member really is to just help support, but also advise in case there have been changes that need to be made. Just thinking about the sciences, if there was new technology introduced, you want to make sure that things are a little up to date, but I don't feel it would be my position to try to change the curriculum. It's up to the administration and the teachers.
Okay, Mr. Walston.
Yes, I follow a lot of their thoughts. I think the board is really about focusing on policies that are going to support curriculum that's going to allow the kids to achieve their best potential, to allow the teachers to help to really have the greatest impact on the young people to move forward each year. But I think it really comes down to the board supporting policy that's going to be beneficial based upon the advisement of the teachers and the administrators, so that we can really create the best outcomes for our kids.
Mr. Lloyd.
I think it's probably the most important time right now to be on the board, to be dealing with the curricula challenges that we have. As a board member, we are the liaison for the public to express their concerns at the board level, right? Because there is an escalation procedure, but once it gets to us, we need to be able to listen to these parents. We need to be able to understand their concerns, and we need to be able to address them, right? Because what is changing in our schools these days is not only what we're teaching, but how we are teaching our kids. Our goal as the board is to make sure that our teachers have the ability to do their jobs. We don't need teachers getting hounded about curriculum that is controversial. We need to be handling that at the board level, and I think we're going to have some challenging couple years because New York State is changing a lot of our curriculum. We've got it coming from the Department of Education, we've got it coming from BOCES, we've got it coming from regents, and going back to critical race theory, we're starting to see aspects of critical race theory show up in our curricula. For example, we're seeing cultural issues being mixed in with math exams so that you can answer a cultural question instead of answering a math question. So we really need to be the the voice for the people and the voice for the community, so that this load doesn't get put on our teachers, because they need to focus on what they do best.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd.
Thank
you. Okay, for question number 9, we start with Ms. Starr. Again, you can ask me to read the question again if you need. It's a long one, so I'll try and be clear up front, but certainly I'll reread it if necessary for anyone. Capital Region BOCES recently held inaugural National Letter of Intent for New Job Opportunities. Career and Technology Education, CTE, is a way for high school students to pursue traditional trades. Pursue traditional trades, licensed professions, and honor level and college level programs via BOCES. As a school board member, how will you make it a priority to promote career and technical education here at Bethlehem Central?
I feel that manufacturing, there are so many jobs out there just because there has not been enough of an emphasis of, okay, you have career options. You don't necessarily have to go, no offense to college, I have my master's degree, but you can study a trade and do extremely well as well. And so I feel with any kind of career day or any type of job fair, there needs to be an opportunity to also showcase that you can have a successful career if you attend a vocational school, or if you decide to go to a boot camp, like a tech boot camp after high school. Like you can just make at least 65K as a coder, like just by getting a certificate. There are a lot more paths that a student can take, that, or they can at least see that there are options for them. So I feel that we just need to make sure, and especially if I'm on the board, I will definitely make sure that students are aware that it's not just college, but you have a lot of options for a successful career. Sorry about my dog.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. And Mr. Walston.
Yes, I actually love this question, given my background. I was actually on a Zoom call 2 weeks ago with BOCES and a lot of local construction companies, all discussing the issue of trades and shortages and lack of labor, and trying to get these young people involved. And that it's not just a track to college, that there's other options and opportunities. And I'm actually hosting a young man this summer to work with us. So I think it's a tremendous partnership. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think young people can realize that they can step out of high school and be a functioning, productive member of society and make a decent living and have a career path that will be incredibly beneficial to them, because not everyone's meant for college. Not everyone wants to go down that route. And I think we really need to focus on trying to create a broader workforce and not just have the priority beyond college. So I love this whole idea. I think it's needed. And I think now that there's collaborations between the schools, BOCES, local businesses, and different opportunities are being created and collaboration. So I love it. I think it's great.
Thank you, Mr. Walston. Mr. Lloyd.
I think that our college loan crisis that the country has right now is proof that this is necessary. We have so many people who have gotten degrees that are unable to put them to work right now. As far as vocational, we really need to remember that people learn differently, right? The kid in class who can't sit still and isn't a big fan of math, he's going to be the guy that's out building big twin turbo engines, right? He has a completely different skill set. So we have to make sure we cater to all of these different skill sets. We should be teaching financial literacy, and we should be teaching kids how to start their own business. You don't have to go to college. You don't have to work for somebody else. We should be teaching them that you can start a business. It's scary when you can't get a business loan when you're 18 years old, but you can go and get a college loan. So we need to empower our children as entrepreneurs and give them the education they need to be successful right out of the bat. There's no reason they can't.
Thank you. And Mr. Tejan?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I saw that that story about the signing the letter of intent. I thought it was fantastic. This goes to my overall sort of viewpoint of the school as to make sure that it supports all of the kids. As I said earlier, we have a great school that produces incredible students, and we're well known for producing high-level students that go to all sorts of great colleges. You talk to any college recruiter, and that's the first thing they tell you is that Bethlehem's a great school and they know it well. And I've gone to college fairs with my kids that's designed to push you to provide those opportunities. And I just want to make sure that we're offering all of the same benefits, the same support, and the same opportunity to all sorts of kids, whether it's for a four-year school, Hudson Valley, a two-year school, a great institution that we have just in our area here, or a trade school. I worked at BOCES for a year. I saw the passion and the interest that the kids had for the different trades. And I think that just as we do for all the kids, it's just one more area that I really think that the school should make sure that we don't neglect, that we make sure that the kids have that option, that it's provided. You can think of it maybe like a buffet. You just put all the options out there and the kids can sample and choose what they want. And whatever it is fantastic. And I think it's a great question, and it's something that I would support fully.
Thank you, Mr. Tejan. Okay, for question number 10, we're going to start with Mr. Walston. What are your thoughts on the assertion that women's sports in the district has been underfunded? Mr. Walston?
Sorry, I flaked on you there real quick. Women's sports being under, I think all sports in Bethlehem has really kind of taken a downturn. I think the priority has kind of disappeared. I know that the numbers are down. And I don't know if that's a trend just because kids are becoming less active, but having kids who have played sports from modified all the way through, it is unfortunate that Bethlehem, has uniforms that have got rips and tears and numbers not on there. You got duct tape on there. And I think focusing on trying to keep the kids active is huge. I think that, supporting the coaches, that they have the resources they need in order to create opportunities for the kids, that there's enough support staff for those coaches. So I think all sports really need to be looked at. And if it is an issue with women's sports that I haven't noticed any difference between the men's sports and women's sports in terms of funding. But if that's something to look at, I think we should definitely consider that. But I think sports in general in Bethlehem definitely needs to have an increase in priority and consideration in the big picture.
Thank you, Mr. Walston. Mr. Lloyd?
I think the most important thing about sports, regardless of the funding, is keeping the morale high. We can get by with some mediocre equipment, right? It doesn't have to be the latest and greatest of everything. We're out there to go play sports. We're out there to go team build and to learn how to respect others and compete. Competition is key. If we don't, we're seeing curriculum these days try to lower the bar for everybody to be more inclusive. But when we play sports, there's always a winner and there's always a loser. And it's very important for the winner to always turn around and help the loser out. So these concepts for our children are very important to learn. Yes, we need to be careful with our funding, but we also need to remember that the morality of playing sports and the benefits that we get out of that, regardless of the funding, is critical to our schools and to the development of our children.
Thank you. And Mr. Tegan?
So I'm a big proponent of sports. I think it's one more aspect of what I would consider to be a well-rounded student. Again, going back to my buffet analogy, I just think that all of the different types of activities that we can offer to our kids are very, very important, whether it's sports or theater or band or clubs. any of that, I think, helps to produce, happy, healthy kids who are going to able to function well in society. With regard to the funding of the sports and the specific question that was asked about the underfunding of women's sports as compared to men's, to be honest, I haven't looked at the numbers, so I can't expound on that, except that I can say anecdotally, I've had some experiences that it seems as if it's possible. And to the extent that I'm on the board, I certainly will take a look at the relative levels of funding and make sure that both boys and girls have the adequate levels of funding that they need. Because as I said, I think sports are a great opportunity for the kids, along with all the rest of the other sort of extracurricular activities.
Thank you, Mr. T. Gen, not T. Gin. My problem, but my apology. I think I also might have fluffed Mr. Walston's name once or twice, so I apologize to all the candidates for my errors in that way. Ms. Starr, you're next.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a very important issue because I feel strongly that sports should just be equally funded. And honestly, one of my favorite memories in high school was fundraising. And I feel like fundraising is such a strong skill set to gain. And I would love to just empower students to be creative with whether they want to hold auctions at the school or do little fundraisers at the corner. I feel like just because one, it should be equally funded, period. But two, if there are things that certain teams want to gain or need access to, you can still figure out a plan to fundraise to get those funds. It doesn't have to be, oh my gosh, okay, now we're stuck with this. Like, no, if you want something better, you have the power to do it. Like, the community loves students, the community wants to support students. So I don't mind being that advocate for helping students create fundraisers for whatever it is that they're looking for.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. For question 11, we're going to begin with Mr. Lloyd, who seems to be quite prepared to start. And the question is, this year's bus proposition is asking voters to approve the purchase of 5 large buses, including 1 electric bus purchase that is higher than each of the diesel purchases. Are you in the favor of this plan? And how can the board inform voters of the transparency of the budget process? So there's 2 parts to that question, all rolled into one.
Right. I believe this is a lot to unpack. I believe the bus department was looking for medium-sized buses. We've gotten ourselves into quite the pickle with the bus shortage, which was really a self-inflicted wound. This is where we went ahead and put in vaccine mandates for our bus drivers, and we lost a lot of our staff. Our staff either retired, or they went to another district, or they were actually fired for not getting the vaccine. We need to be really careful how we move forward with our electric bus rollout. I would propose more time going into evaluating the capabilities of the EUM manufacturer converted buses that we're using, and either, we really need to do some cost analysis on these buses, because they're $360,000 as opposed to $180,000, plus the infrastructure that we need to build, and the increased maintenance costs, and the fact that our mechanics can't work on these high voltage systems. We have to call, just like the Teslas, right? We've got to call specialists in to deal with the high voltage system. So as of right now, I would not support our current position on this.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Tejan.
Yeah, I haven't examined the issue. I trust that the folks who looked at this looked at all the numbers, looked at the pros and cons, weighed all of the factors and made a decision. So I'm not in a position here to sort of second guess that. I will say that in terms of the purchase of electric buses and other types of sort of environmental type of activities. I think it's the future. I think it's good to be proactive. I assume that one of the pros of it was that down the line, it's going to save money eventually. Obviously, with the gas prices, what they are, electric buses is looking better and better. At some point, I appreciate that there's going to be an initial outlay in terms of infrastructure and mechanics and things like that. But I do think that it's probably the way that's going to be going. It's going to have to start at some point, and I trust that these factors were considered. I think the second part of the question is about transparency of the process. I think that quite frankly, the process has been fairly transparent. My knee-jerk reaction is always for more transparency. I want to make sure that the community is informed of the things that are going on, that we receive feedback from the community, and that we assess and consider that feedback, and so that everybody is aware of what's going on, so there's no surprises later. So I would support the transparency and any additional questions about transparency or solutions that can be coming down with regard to additional transparency, then I would support that as well.
Thank you. Ms. Starr?
I also kind of agree, since, I'm not a current board member and not sure what happens during their closed sessions. I do feel that transparency is an important issue. And even when there are hearings, not everyone's able to attend them. So there should be kind of another path. Okay, if you're not able to attend, contact us here to share your concerns, just so the board is at least able to get as many perspectives as possible. I mean, I personally am pro-green, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't be the type of person to listen to what the community's concerns are. And I agree with Mr. Oh, wow, now I forgot. I am sorry. I agree with someone who mentioned how the gas prices are going up, and, I am hoping for a free Tesla one day already just because of that. But I do feel that it's good for our environment. I do support the decision, but as far as before it ends up on the ballot, there should be more transparency for members to give feedback.
Thank you. Mr. Walston?
I do think, I think we obviously have to move in that direction. There's regulations coming down. I think one thing to look at is the budget considerations. And I think how aggressively we move in that direction is definitely something to consider. I think, eventually we're going to get to a point where there's going to be some infrastructure considerations to look at. And I think that, still the other consideration is, will we have enough ability within New York State to manage the demand and whatnot? So I think, trying to stay on this path of aggressively purchasing way ahead, if in the event that goalpost gets moved, I think is a strong consideration to try to wonder, trying to be that far ahead of the date in which everyone is supposedly going to have to go electric, I think is a strong consideration for our budget. Just given that, again, we're still burning a lot of fossil fuels in order to create electricity. So I think in New York State, it's definitely a consideration for us from a budget standpoint. I think transparency, again, not being in part of the closed session, but I think during that budget hearing, I think the existing board certainly asked a lot of questions. They were clearly motivated to try to move more in the direction of electric bus versus some of the other recommendations. But again, we have to eventually move in that direction. I just really want to look at if that goalpost will be moved down the road, that we're not making budget decisions that are going to put us in a tough spot, that may impact other options, given that the electric buses are, almost more than double what the other bus options are. So.
Thank you. Okay, for question number 12, we're going to begin with Mr. Tejan. How do you plan to engage parents and families in meaningful conversations around important issues and decisions?
That's a great question. Obviously, the board, as it is, has the meetings, and part of those meetings are open for for back and forth and for conversations. I have to say that even in the process of running for the board. I've been engaging the public quite a bit. People recognize me on the street and I stop and I talk. I'm always happy to do that. To the extent that there are additional things that we can do, have an open forum, have more less formal meet and greets with regard to issues that are coming up, and maybe in not the strictly formal board meeting setting. I think that's great. I certainly would be open for any of that. And I think that the more communication we have with the community, the better, because it allows us to understand what they're thinking. It allows them to feel as though they have at least some sort of voice in the process and the decisions that are being made. And hopefully that brings everybody together with regard to what decisions are eventually made.
Thank you, Mr. Tejan. Ms. Starr?
I apologize. Sure, she can use my water bottle. I apologize for that. But I feel even with, as soon as I decided to run for the seat on the board, I immediately thought I need to start talking with those who I plan to be serving. And accessibility to me is my #1 priority. I want everyone to feel like they don't have to wait until the board meeting. I want them to feel that if there is an issue, they can feel free to email me or email anyone else on the board. I know that there is one email on the board page where you can at any time send over your concerns. I recently just found that out actually. But accessibility, I feel accessibility is so important. And I just want everyone to know that my personal goal is to make sure that you can contact me whenever with any issues that you may have that should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Starr. It's always lovely being a parent, isn't it? Mr. Walston, your response?
I think the more parental involvement, the better. And I think there's probably a few educators who would, argue that. So I think the more that parents can be involved would be great. I think, one thing I'd love to see kind of first off with potentially with the meeting structure that the parents can share their thoughts and communicate things at the front end of the meeting. Watching some of these parents wait, hours and hours to then finally have to say something. I think shifting that forward would definitely show a greater priority in hearing their feedback. So definitely something that I would be interested in discussing and to see if that's an option. But I also think, just being more open to feedback and considerations is really, really important. Whether that's a bigger message board or again, I agree with Bob 100%, whether it's some type of quarterly meetings with parents that they can reach out. But yeah, I think to discourage any interest in parental involvement would be a failure. So I think definitely encouraging more parental involvement is a win for everyone.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd.
Well, I'd like to say it's difficult to communicate with the board unless you agree with them. Speaking about any differences or challenges that you have, even if these are legal concerns, for many people over the past year have not been addressed by the board. When we send emails to the board or to, and we only get back, thank you for your comments, we're not looking to comment, we're looking to engage, have a discussion, and find a solution. At the board meetings, there is no communication with the board unless you create an agenda item. The only thing we have at the board for parents is 3 minutes to express their concerns, and the board won't engage you. So there are some challenges right now, especially for anybody who disagrees or has complaints for the board. As far as accessibility, I'm very accessible. In fact, I've been in touch with dozens of parents and teachers for the past couple months trying to work out issues with the board, which is again why I'm here, so I can represent these people and provide a different viewpoint, right? It seems like biggest challenge, one of the challenges we're having is that everybody agrees on the current board. I'm not looking to disrupt anything. I'm looking to provide a different point of view and ask that others change their paradigm so they can see the advantages of my point of view.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Okay, for question number 13, we are going to begin with Ms. Starr. What is your opinion regarding district initiatives in the area of character education, diversity, and inclusion? And what are ways the Board of Education can implement measurable goals in these areas?
I feel it starts with exposure, honestly. And I brought up the Slingerlands in intercultural fair before, because I feel that is one example of being able to show the whole district that members within our district come from different countries and different backgrounds, and that needs to be shared. I know I know some students who almost feel isolated because they don't feel that their differences are celebrated. And I feel that just it's only because there isn't enough of a celebration aspect to it, the celebrations of cultures. Like one high schooler told me, I really want to create a Jewish club. I'm like, do it, create the Jewish club. I feel people need to understand there's more things besides Hanukkah to celebrate within the religion. I feel that we need to just have this culture where all of our backgrounds and ethnicities are just celebrated instead of just looked at, okay, that person's different, it's not like me. So, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Walston.
I think we really have some very amazing clubs right now. You know, there's No Place for Hate, there's RAC, there's a multicultural club. So I think we have some really awesome clubs that touch on both character and some of the diversity topics. A huge piece that I would love to see is more community involvement for the young people, more leadership opportunities and volunteering opportunities. I think if these young people can gain a lot more perspective on the world, I think we can step away from some of the contentiousness issues and adversarial stuff that's there. If these kids can gain more perspective, working together, being involved in things, being involved in the community, you know, let's face it, kids are at the most selfish point in their lives. And I think if we can get them out of their selfish bodies and experiencing more life and having a perspective on things and working together, I think that would be huge. I get that kids are busy, but we also have kids who are spending excessive amounts of time on screens. So I think, you know, any kid who tells me that they don't have time to spend an extra couple hours a week volunteering, I think that would be a tough sell if we were to look at things a little bit deeper. So I think providing more volunteer opportunities where they can really grow and develop and just leadership is huge. So I think in terms of how do we measure success, if we were able to do something like that, I think it would be, you know, at the end of the year, how were we able to increase volunteer hours for kids and what was the impact on the community? So I think something like that could really have a huge impact, and I think be very easy to track in terms of level of success.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd.
I think we're getting into dangerous territory once we get into DEI. Again, we are talking about well-intentioned, right? We want to celebrate our differences, but when we take all of our kids and put them into different boxes and say this group gets to do something because they're in that box, that ends up dividing our kids. I see schools as more of a neutral place where we can acknowledge our differences, but we really need to focus on equality and not equity. We understand that children come from different backgrounds and have different hardships, but when they come to school, they all need to be treated the same. We can understand that, you know, we have rich dads and poor dads, but we shouldn't be using that to have one kid get something that another kid doesn't. So we're putting people into different boxes And we're really dividing up our children when we do that. Not everybody wants to be, the underprivileged class the whole time. That is degrading to a lot of these kids. So I understand the intention, but I think we need to focus on more neutral elements as well as actual equality.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Tejan.
So character, inclusiveness, equity, and diversity, obviously, these are all laudable goals. And I think that as part of the school curriculum, I look at a school as more than just reading and writing. When I went to school, we took a civics class, which basically taught us how to go out into the world and be a better citizen. I see this as sort of in the same vein where these kids are going to leave Bethlehem. They're going to go off to wherever it is, trade school, college, move out into the wide world, and they're going to be exposed to all sorts of different things. And as part of that preparation, in the same way we teach them to read and write and do arithmetic, I think we have to teach them how to interact with other folks, how to view life from different viewpoints, and I think that all helps to help them become better critical thinkers, which I think is incredibly important, that they are able to use their minds, they're able to look at things, they're able to experience different viewpoints, and it doesn't necessarily have to change their mind, but they're exposed to it. And they're going to be exposed to it when they get out of Bethlehem. And I think that there's no problem at all with exposing them here. I absolutely agree with John that volunteerism, is one way that it can be done outside of the school, because the best way to develop empathy among people is just exposure. All sorts of studies show that. You want to get people to get along, you put them together. And kids in Bethlehem sometimes come from certain backgrounds, and I think it's great to have them exposed, and obviously volunteerism is a fantastic way to do that. And I think I would support all of these initiatives.
Thank you. And thanks all your candidates as well as the audience. We're at a point where I'm going to start to shift towards closing statements. But before I do that, I just want to remind the audience basically that voting is on May 17th from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. in the upper gym. You can get an absentee ballot if you need one from the district office. And there will also be voting on the library budget and the one open trustee position. And again, you can see their candidate event that was held on May 4th on the library website. But I do want to thank all the candidates really for answering the difficult questions and providing their insights so that we can have some educated voters who can go to the polls better understanding who they're voting for. A recording of this event will be available on the Board of Education website. So we will now shift towards closing statements. We do closing statements in the opposite order from where we started our opening statements. So actually the first one up will be Mr. Lloyd. 1 minute.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for their time and participation tonight. It was nice to meet the other candidates and find out their views on a lot of these issues. Since the beginning, since when I have announced my campaign, I have been very hard on talking about these very divisive issues that we're dealing with, and I would ask for your vote, and I would ask that you consider me your ally in the community to work with the school board, work with our superintendent to provide the best education and elite academics and return to a merit-based system for everybody at Bethlehem.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Walston, your closing statements.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone for their time, for watching us all here. I am really excited to be a candidate for the school board. I want to be part of a team that's focused on promoting policies that support the students to really reach their greatest potential. And I am excited to be running to encourage increased community involvement in the schools and to increase the students' involvement in our community. I believe that it's really our time to support the development of our children through a focus on resiliency and mental health. And I think we need to keep our kids healthy, both physically, mentally, and emotionally. Wellness is really paramount. And I want our students to learn how to manage success and manage failure. And I want them to be functional members of society when they leave the halls of the high school after graduation. Excuse me. And so I really like to be part of the team that's supporting policies to make our programs even better. And I want to keep our teachers and staff provided with the best resources available so that the future generations can really take advantage of this tremendous school district. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Starr, your closing statements?
Just want to thank every single person for watching us. And it was great to finally meet all the candidates, to hear their point of views. And I just want everyone to know that advocacy work is always going to be at my core. It's something I've always done since I was a kid. Volunteering is pretty much second nature to me, and I still volunteer and am involved in a number of organizations that I can help. Well, I already do within the community, but gain more exposure for the students to do. And I really want to empower not just students, but the parents that, you know, if there is something missing within the district, they can speak up and they can even try to create those changes. I just want to make it clear that, you know, I'm always here, open to hear any suggestions. I want to be your voice on the board, and I appreciate you listening to me tonight.
Thank you so much. Mr. Tejan?
Yes, let me echo the thanks that the other folks have done here. Thanks to the Albany County League of Women Voters for putting it together. And thanks to all the folks who took time to either submit questions or just listen in tonight. It's very important. And the fact that you've taken the time is a good thing, because I think that it shows the support for the board and therefore for the school and as an extension for the community, and it's great. So I would ask for your vote on May 17th. I think that I can be an asset to the board. I really believe that the board has done a great job so far of doing a lot of the things to keep this an amazing school and to provide our kids with amazing opportunities. I think that going forward, it's going to be some tough times. It's been an amazingly challenging time for the last 2 years for everybody involved. My hat's off to everybody who weathered these storms. I think that going forward, we're gonna have to keep working and make sure that this district stays at the same level of excellence as it has been. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thanks to all of the people who participated by sending in questions. One of the things the league strives for in these sorts of forums is to have those questions come from the public. This is for the public's best interest and to allow them to hear from you. So I thank all the candidates for really their time in providing their thoughtful answers. I want to thank the board of, the school district for allowing us to provide this to you. Again, the budget is being voted on, as well as these candidates. There's only two. You get to only choose two of these very four strong candidates on May 17th. This can be viewed again, if anyone cares to, on the website for the district office. And we really want to we really want to thank everyone for participating. The league is actually celebrating its 100th year. Our local chapter is celebrating its 100th year actually this year. We hope that you will consider joining us either as a member or as a financial supporter. And with that, I thank everyone for their time this evening, and really hope that this really achieved, I know it did for me, really achieved what we had hoped in terms of getting the public educated. So with that, I say good evening and have a great day, and good luck to all the candidates.
Thank you.
Thank you
So much.
Thank you very much.